country. We want to be our own country, not part of England. And we want to have our own laws and have our own leaders and all that. And in that Declaration of Independence, it talks about these same things. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created, created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So equality and liberty, two very important ideas. What do those actually mean? What does it mean to be equal? If we say that the two children are of equal height, what would that mean?
It would mean they're the same height.
The same height, that's right. Now, when the people who founded our country talked about people being equal, they weren't talking about how tall they were. They were talking about their rights. You see, back in England, there was a king. The king, he was considered more important than other people. In our new country, they said, no. In our new country, all people ought to have the same
They
rights.
didn't like it.
Even the president has to obey all the same laws as the other people. And then that other word here, liberty or freedom. What does that mean? Liberty. To be free. What does it mean to be free?
To be able to do what you want.
Okay, be able to do what you want and not do what someone else tells you to do, right? Within reason, of course. We still have rules. But, well, think back to that king in England. If you didn't like what the king did in England, you might go and complain about him to your neighbor. And you know what? Just for complaining, they can take you and put you in jail. Now, in our new country, we say, no, you ought to have the freedom to express yourself, to say what you believe. We ought to have freedom, for example, of religion. Back in England, other countries in Europe, they only had one kind of church for each country. In our new country, we said, no, you can choose. You can go to this kind of church, or that kind of church, or to no church at all. You have the freedom to choose. So those are two very important ideas. Liberty and equality. However, and this was a very big however, it wasn't quite true that everyone living in our country in the beginning had that freedom and that equality. One group of people in particular was denied these very things. And who were those people who were not free at all? Doesn't answer that. Well, not quite the Americans.
Slaves.
The slaves. Slaves brought here from Africa as slaves, we should say. But they were not free. They were not equal to others. So in the beginning of our nation, we had this interesting situation. On the one hand, a wonderful new country dedicated these great ideas like liberty and equality. But in one part of the country, by that point in time, mostly in the South, the institution of human slavery. Slave. Now, what does that mean, actually? What does it mean to be a slave? You need to be slaves. Let me go back further. You guys can answer too. All right. Yeah. And the very back there. I can't hear. What's? You are owned by someone. That's something people forget. We're going to come back to that. It's very, very important. What else about being a slave? You back there?
You have to work for someone.
All right, you have to work for someone. Of course, a lot of us have to work for someone, right? Some of your own parents might work for someone, but it doesn't mean they're a slave. Okay? They might joke about it, but they really aren't. What else about being a slave? They're back there.
That sometimes you cannot sleep when you need to, or when you need to do something, they say no, you can't do it.
You don't have freedom to make your own decisions, right? The person who owns you, and let's go back to that, because that's very, very important. Just like a man or a woman might own a horse. A man or woman owned the slave, which meant the slave doesn't make any decisions for himself. The owner decides everything about the slave. The owner can decide where the slave works and how long he works and how hard he works. Do the slaves get paid?
No.
Well, this is what they said. They said, we'll give you a place to live and food to eat and clothing. That's all you really need. That was their pay, you see. Okay, but they didn't get paid like we understand getting paid, money and so on. And were the slaves always treated well? No. Some of them were. Sometimes slaves were treated well, but other times they were treated very badly. They could be beaten very, very severely. based on all these things. Oh, and that bit about being owned. That means that the owner might decide, let's say he wants you to be his slave, but he doesn't need your husband or wife, or he doesn't need your children to work for him. He could sell them to someone else, and he'd take them away. Now, does it sound to you like it would be a good thing to be a slave? Not at all. I knew even at your age that I would not want to be a slave. And so I determined in my own heart, I will never make another person to be my slave. That would be wrong. Well, that's how things were in this country when I came along. Now, I wasn't alive in 1776. I'm not that old, you know. I wasn't born till the year 1809, which means my grandparents were alive in 1776. My grandmother, do your grandparents tell you stories sometimes about what